"I can heal you, but on one condition," said the poor little girl to the sick billionaire. Elizabeth Duran woke up one Tuesday morning unable to move her legs. The 52-year-old CEO, owner of one of New York's largest construction companies, felt panic set in as she realized she had no feeling from the waist down. Just then, a barely 8-year-old girl with curly hair and worn clothes managed to slip into the city's most expensive hospital room and whispered words in her ear that would change her life forever. "Ma'am, I can heal you," said little Manon, looking straight into Elizabeth's frightened eyes. "How did you get in here?" Elizabeth tried to reach for the call button, but the little girl gently held her hand. "Don't be afraid. My grandmother taught me things before she disappeared. But there's a condition." The child's voice was firm, not at all what one would expect from someone so young. Elizabeth had spent 3 days being examined by the country's top neurologists. MRIs, CT scans, blood work, and nothing explained her sudden paralysis. The doctors spoke of psychological causes of stress, but she rejected any non-medical explanation. "What condition?" she asked, more out of desperation than belief in the child's words. "You have to help me find my grandmother. She disappeared 2 months ago, and no one wants to help me because I'm just a street kid." Manon sold candy at the traffic light outside the hospital. Every day, she saw luxury cars come and go, people solving their problems. She slept in a cardboard box behind the gas station and survived on the small change she collected. "This is crazy." Elizabeth shook her head. "You're just a child, and you're just a sick person that doctors can't cure." Manon replied without malice, simply stating a fact. A heavy silence fell. Elizabeth looked at her inert legs under the white sheet. 3 days earlier, she had presented a project to Japanese investors. Now she couldn't even feel her own feet. "How do you know you can heal me?" "My grandmother Jacqueline healed rich people when I was little. She taught me that sometimes the body stops working when the soul is sick. She said she had special massage techniques learned from her great-grandmother." Dear listeners, if you like this story, don't hesitate to leave a like and especially to subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot to get started. Now, let's continue. Elizabeth studied the little girl's face. There was something in Manon's dark eyes that troubled her. A strange maturity for such a young child. "And why should I trust you?" "Because you have nothing left to lose," Manon said, climbing onto the chair beside the bed. "And because I know things about you that you might have forgotten." "What kind of things?" "You had a nanny when you were little, didn't you? A black woman who sang lullabies and made beignets on Sundays." Elizabeth's heart raced. How could this child know that? It had been decades since she'd thought of Jacqueline, the woman who had practically raised her while her parents were away on business. "How do you know that?" "My grandmother often spoke of a rich little girl she cared for as if she were her own daughter. She said she had to leave suddenly and never got to see her grow up." Elizabeth felt a pang in her chest. She vaguely remembered the day Jacqueline left. Her parents had told her she'd stolen money and had been fired. Elizabeth, only 5 years old at the time, had cried for days. "What was your grandmother's name?" "Jacqueline Marie Dubois. She always said she had taken care of a little girl named Lisa in a big house in Beverly Hills." Elizabeth's hands trembled. Jacqueline always called her Lisa. It was the only nickname she liked. "Child, this can't be a coincidence," she murmured. "It's not. When I learned that Mrs. Elizabeth Duran was in this hospital, I did some research on you. I saw old photos of your family online. I recognized the house where my grandmother worked." A nurse entered the room to check Elizabeth's vital signs, interrupting their conversation. Manon hid behind the curtain until he left. "You can't stay here," Elizabeth said when they were alone again. "If you're discovered, they'll call security. So accept my offer. Help me find my grandmother, and I'll try to heal you." Elizabeth closed her eyes. Her life had been built on total control. She had never depended on anyone, never shown weakness. Accepting help from a street kid seemed absurd, but her legs remained inert. "What exactly do you want me to do?" "Use your contacts, your money. My grandmother lived in a shelter in the South Side before she disappeared. The people there don't give me information because they think I'm too young. But if an important woman like you asks, and in return, what do you do? Special massages she taught me, and I talk to you about things that might hurt you inside. Elizabeth said, without humor, You think my paralysis is emotional. I think everything in our body is connected. My grandmother always said that. That night, Elizabeth stayed awake, replaying their conversation. Manon had left a paper with the shelter's address and promised to return the next day. In the morning, Elizabeth called her assistant. Sophie, I need you to go to a shelter and investigate the disappearance of a person, she said on the phone. Of course, Mrs. Elizabeth. Who are we looking for? A woman named Jacqueline Marie Dubois. She was about 65 when she disappeared 2 months ago. Sophie noted the information, but Elizabeth sensed hesitation in her voice. Is something wrong? No, it's just... That name sounds familiar. When Manon returned late in the afternoon, Elizabeth was eager for news. Sophie went to the shelter. Jacqueline did live there, but she left one evening and never came back. No one knows where she is. She wouldn't have left like that, Manon said, climbing back onto the chair. Something happened to her. How can you be so sure? Because she promised me she'd come get me when she found a better place for us. My grandmother never broke her promises. Manon took a small vial of oil from her bag. Can I start the massages? Elizabeth hesitated. Letting an unknown child touch her seemed irresponsible. But the doctors had nothing left to offer except antidepressants and physical therapy that yielded no results. Just the feet to start, she agreed. Manon applied the oil to her hands and began to massage Elizabeth's feet with precise circular motions. Her small hands had surprising strength. My grandmother said that feet are the foundation of everything. If they're blocked, the rest of the body locks up too. During the massage, Manon talked about Jacqueline, how she sang while cooking, how she told stories about when she worked for wealthy families, how she sometimes cried looking at an old photo. What photo? Elizabeth asked. Of a little blonde girl. My grandmother kept it close to her heart like a treasure. She said that child was the daughter she never had. Elizabeth felt tears welling up in her eyes. She remembered how Jacqueline would hold her after a nightmare, how she'd tend to her scraped knees, how she'd read her stories at night. Why did your parents fire her? Manon asked, continuing the massage. They said she stole money. And you believed them? Elizabeth remained silent. At the time, she was too young to doubt. Later, as she grew up, she had simply accepted her parents' version. My grandmother would never have stolen anything, Manon stated with conviction. She's the most honest person I know. When the young girl finished the massage, Elizabeth felt a strange sensation. For a few seconds, she was certain she had felt something in her left foot. Did you feel something? Manon asked. Maybe. I'm not sure. That's normal, it'll come gradually. That night, Elizabeth dreamed of Jacqueline for the first time in decades. In her dream, the woman was crying as she packed her belongings into an old suitcase. The next day, Sophie arrived with more information. I discovered something strange, Mrs. Elizabeth. Jacqueline didn't leave the shelter of her own free will. According to the social worker, she received a phone call and became very agitated. She left, saying she had something urgent to deal with. What kind of call? They don't know, but she left an address on a piece of paper. It's here in Beverly Hills, near your childhood home. Elizabeth felt a chill in her stomach. What address exactly? Sophie consulted her notes. 847 Magnolia Avenue. That's the house where you lived as a child. Elizabeth's world seemed to spin. Why would Jacqueline go to her old house? When Manon arrived for their second massage session, Elizabeth told her about her discovery. I knew it, the young girl exclaimed. My grandmother went to look for you. But why didn't she reach you? I have no idea. That house was sold years ago. My parents moved into an apartment when I got married. Who lives there now? A family bought it after us. I haven't kept in touch. Manon remained thoughtful as she prepared the oil for the massage. Do you know why my grandmother really left? Elizabeth sighed. She was in charge of the household money. One day, my father discovered that $2,000 was missing. That was a lot of money back then. And then, she was accused? Yes, my father said only she had access to the safe. But she denied it? Elizabeth tried to remember. She was so young then. I think so. I vaguely remember her crying, trying to explain something, but my parents didn't want to listen. Manon began to massage Elizabeth's legs, this time moving up towards her knees. What if she didn't steal it? How so? What if someone took the money and let her take the blame? The question resonated in Elizabeth's mind. She had never considered that possibility. Who else had access to the safe? Only my parents. And Elizabeth paused. And my older brother, Philippe. He was 17 at the time. Philippe had been a difficult teenager. Elizabeth remembered the arguments between him and their parents about money, drugs, bad company. He needed money for something. He always needed it. He owed dangerous people constantly. During the massage, Elizabeth began to feel more sensations in her legs. Little tingles as if something was waking up. It's working, she murmured. Her body remembers how to heal, Manon said with the wisdom of a child. But there's still a lot stuck inside. When Manon left, Elizabeth called Philippe. They hadn't spoken in months after an argument about business. Hi Lisa, how are you? Paralyzed from the legs down. Thanks for asking. Oh my gosh, how awful. Do the doctors know what it is? No, Philippe. I need to ask you something about our childhood. Do you remember Jacqueline? Vaguely. Why? Do you remember the day she left? Of course. She stole our parents' money. Philippe, I need the truth. You took that money. The silence stretched for long seconds. Why are you asking that now? Because maybe my illness is connected to past injustices that were never resolved. Lisa, you're talking nonsense. Illnesses have nothing to do with that. Philippe, tell me the truth. I'm here in this bed, unable to walk, trying to understand why my life has been turned upside down. If you know something, more silence. I had problems back then, he finally said. I owed money to dangerous people. Elizabeth's heart pounded. You took the money? I was going to put it back before anyone noticed, but Dad found out first. And you let Jacqueline take the fall? I was 17, Lisa. I was scared. Those guys would have broken my bones if I didn't pay. Elizabeth felt nauseous. Philippe, you ruined an innocent person's life. I know. I've carried that guilt for decades, but I couldn't say anything back then. Dad would have killed me. And later, when you grew up, why did you never go apologize to her? Because I'm a coward. Philippe's voice was choked. I always have been. Elizabeth hung up, her hands trembling. Jacqueline had been unfairly fired, kicked out of the house she'd worked in for years, separated from the child she loved like her daughter, all because of a lie. Dear listeners, if you like this story, don't hesitate to leave a like and especially to subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot to get started. Now, let's continue. When Manon arrived the next day, she found Elizabeth in tears. Did you find something out? The young girl asked. Elizabeth recounted her conversation with Philippe. Manon listened in silence, but her eyes filled with tears. I knew my grandmother was innocent, she finally said. She always said that one day the truth would come out. Now I have to find Jacqueline and ask her to forgive me. My family ruined her life. She doesn't blame you. My grandmother always said that little Lisa was the purest soul she had ever known. During the massage session that day, Elizabeth felt something different. Her muscles seemed to be waking up little by little. Why do you think it's working? Because you're stopping carrying secrets that are too heavy, explained Manon. My grandmother said that lies turn into stone in the body. Sophie arrived late in the afternoon with news. Mrs. Elizabeth, I have more information. Jacqueline returned to your old house the day she disappeared. The neighbors saw a black woman talking with the current resident. And then, the man said she was asking about the Duran family. When he explained that you no longer lived there, she seemed lost. She said she had to find someone to settle an important matter. She gave the name of that person. She was looking for Lisa. Elizabeth was stunned. Jacqueline had spent decades thinking about her, looking for her. Sophie, I want you to hire a private investigator. I need to find Jacqueline. I've already thought of that. I know someone very competent. That night, Elizabeth had another dream. This time, she was a child again, and Jacqueline was teaching her to make beignets. In the dream, the woman told her she would never stop loving her, even if they had to remain separated. She woke up with her legs tingling intensely. On the fourth day of massage, Manon brought something new. Do you have children? She asked, warming the oil. I have a son, Thomas. He's 28. He visits me. Elizabeth was embarrassed. We're a bit estranged. He thinks I work too much and don't pay enough attention to my family. And he's right. Manon's direct question caught Elizabeth off guard. Maybe. I built my company from nothing. I always believed that hard work was a proof of love. My grandmother always said that love is time, not money. During the massage, Manon told other stories about Jacqueline. How she had raised several orphans in a shelter, how they all called her grandma. How she dreamed of having her own house to take in all abandoned children. She never married? No. She said her heart already belonged to a family she had cared for once. Elizabeth's heart ached. Jacqueline had dedicated her entire life to caring for others, and her family had driven her away for something she hadn't done. Sophie arrived with the detective's report. We have a lead. A woman matching Jacqueline's description was seen at the bus station on the day of her disappearance. She bought a ticket to Lyon. Lyon? Why would she go there? The investigator is looking into it, but there are traces of a shelter in that city where she might have gone that afternoon. For the first time in a week, Elizabeth managed to move her toes slightly. Manon, she cried. Look, the young girl smiled radiantly. I knew it would work. How did you know? Because you're starting to forgive yourself. Forgive myself for what? For being a child who couldn't change adult decisions. The young girl's remark deeply touched Elizabeth. For years, she had carried an unconscious guilt related to Jacqueline's departure. Thomas appeared at the hospital that evening. Mom, I heard you were hospitalized. Why didn't you call me? Elizabeth looked at her son. He had his father's brown hair and blue eyes. I didn't want to worry you. Of course you did. You never want to depend on anyone. Thomas pulled a chair closer to the bed. What did the doctors say? Elizabeth told him about her unexplained paralysis without mentioning Manon or the massages. Maybe your body is asking you to take a break, Thomas suggested. You've been working 70 hours a week for years. Work has always been my way of escaping feelings. I know. Thomas took his mother's hand. Mom, when Dad died, you shut down. You became a work machine. We never really talked after that. Elizabeth felt tears welling up. Thomas was right. After her husband's death, she had retreated into work to avoid facing the pain. I don't know how to deal with emotions, she admitted. Then learn. I can help you. For the first time in years, mother and son talked about emotions, loss, fear. The next day, Manon noticed a change in Elizabeth. You seem lighter today. I talked with my son yesterday. We said things that needed to be said for years. That's good. Now let's work on your thighs. Manon's massages became more intense. The young girl seemed to know exactly where to touch to awaken sensations. My grandmother said the body holds all memories, even those the mind forgets. During the session, Elizabeth remembered details about Jacqueline, how she sang in the moonlight to chase away nightmares, how she prepared chamomile tea when Elizabeth was sick, how she protected her from her parents' arguments. Jacqueline was more of a mother to me than my own mother, she said. And where are your parents now? They passed away a few years ago. I never knew if they found out the truth about Philippe. You never told them? I only found out now. Manon briefly interrupted the massage. You're carrying guilt for so many things you didn't do, aren't you? How so? Guilty for not defending my grandmother. Guilty for not being close to your son. Guilty for not being present when your husband was sick. Elizabeth was shocked by the young girl's insight. How do you know that about my husband? I researched you online. I saw he had cancer and that you continued to work even at the hospital. It was true. Elizabeth had maintained her professional commitments even during her husband's treatment, saying she had to keep the company running. I thought I was strong and you were, but sometimes being too strong hurts. That afternoon, Sophie arrived, agitated. Mrs. Elizabeth, we found Jacqueline. She's in a hospital in Lyon. She had a stroke 2 weeks ago and is hospitalized. A stroke? How is she? Stable, but with no family to accompany her. The hospital didn't know who to contact. Elizabeth instinctively tried to get out of bed, but her legs still didn't respond completely. I have to go. Mrs. Elizabeth, you can barely walk. Then take me by ambulance. I can use a wheelchair, it doesn't matter. When Manon arrived and heard the news, she started to cry. My grandmother is sick. Why didn't she tell me? She probably didn't want to worry you, Elizabeth said. Just like I didn't want to worry my son. Can I come too, please? Elizabeth looked at the 8-year-old girl. She had spent months alone on the street looking for her grandmother. Of course you can. The trip to Lyon was tense. Elizabeth in a wheelchair, Manon clutching her hand, Sophie driving. The hospital was simple, very different from the luxurious establishment where Elizabeth was hospitalized. Jacqueline was in a shared room, asleep and hooked up to machines. When Manon saw her grandmother, she ran to embrace her. Grandma, Grandma, I found you. Jacqueline slowly opened her eyes. When she saw her granddaughter, her face lit up. Manon, my little one, how did you find me? Mrs. Elizabeth helped me. Jacqueline turned to Elizabeth in her wheelchair. Her eyes filled with tears. Lisa, is that really you?
Jacqueline.
Sorry it took so long to find you. The 67-year-old woman tried to sit up in bed. Manon helped her. My little one, how you've grown. You've become an important woman. Jacqueline, I have to ask you to forgive me. Forgive me? Why, my child? My brother Philippe confessed. It was he who took the money. You were wrongly accused. Jacqueline closed her eyes and sighed deeply. I knew one day the truth would come out. You suffered because of us, lost years of your life because of a lie. Lisa, you were just a child. You couldn't have known, but I've grown up. I could have looked for you, investigated. Instead, I simply accepted my parents' version. Jacqueline took Elizabeth's hand. Do you think I've held a grudge all these years? I haven't held a grudge. I felt nostalgia. Nostalgia for the little girl I raised as my own daughter. Elizabeth burst into tears. Jacqueline, please forgive me. Please forgive me. I have nothing to forgive my daughter. You were always the joy of my life. Dear listeners, if you like this story, don't hesitate to leave a like and especially to subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot to get started. Now, let's continue. At that moment, something extraordinary happened. Elizabeth felt a surge of strength in her legs. Slowly, she was able to move her feet, then her legs. Manon, it's working, she exclaimed. The little girl smiled. I knew it would work when you were reunited. Jacqueline looked confused. What's happening? Elizabeth explained her unexplained paralysis and how Manon had offered her help in exchange for finding her grandmother. My little girl did that. Jacqueline looked at Manon with pride. She saved me in every way possible. In the following days, Elizabeth was transferred to a hospital in Lyon to be near Jacqueline and accelerate her own recovery. Thomas visited them every day. He and Manon quickly became friends, united by their common affection for Elizabeth. Mom, this little one has transformed you, Thomas remarked. I've never seen you so human. She taught me that vulnerability isn't weakness, and Jacqueline taught me that forgiveness frees the one who forgives. During their shared hospitalization, Elizabeth learned about Jacqueline's life after leaving their family, how she had worked in other homes, always sending money to orphanages, how she had dedicated herself to abandoned children without ever starting her own family. Why did you never get married? Elizabeth asked. Because my heart already had a family, you and later the children at the orphanage. Jacqueline, you wasted your life because of us. I didn't waste anything. Every child I cared for was a piece of me that I protected. Manon, sleeping in an armchair between the two beds, listened to their conversations attentively. Grandma, now we can all live together. Jacqueline looked at Elizabeth. I don't know if Mrs. Elizabeth. Of course, we're going to live together, Elizabeth interrupted. I've had a big empty house for years. You're going to bring it back to life. But Jacqueline's recovery was slower than expected. Doctors said she would need special care due to her age and stroke. I'll hire the best nurses, Elizabeth said. That's not necessary, Jacqueline replied. I just need my family close to me. We are your family, Manon said, hugging her grandmother. We always have been, added Elizabeth. Philippe appeared at the hospital one afternoon. He brought flowers, his eyes shining with tears. Jacqueline, He couldn't finish his sentence. Philippe, little Philippe? Jacqueline recognized him immediately. I need to ask you to forgive me. I was the one who took the money. I let you take the blame because I was a coward. Jacqueline looked at the 48-year-old man before her. You were hardly more than a child. You were afraid too. That doesn't excuse what I did. I destroyed your life. My life wasn't destroyed. It was different from what I had planned, but not destroyed. Philippe knelt by the bed. How can you forgive me? Because holding on to anger is like swallowing poison and hoping the other person dies. Elizabeth watched the scene, moved. Jacqueline had learned to forgive in a way she herself was only beginning to discover. Philippe, I want you to set up a support fund for the shelter where Jacqueline lived, Elizabeth said. That's how you'll both make amends for the past. I had already thought of that, Philippe replied. I want to do something bigger, a full foundation. 2 weeks later, Elizabeth was allowed to leave the hospital. Her legs had regained almost full mobility, although she still needed physical therapy. Jacqueline had also improved significantly, but doctors recommended ongoing care. Let's go home, Elizabeth said as she left the hospital. Which home? Manon asked. Our home. Elizabeth had prepared her Beverly Hills residence to welcome Jacqueline and Manon. She had hired a part-time nurse and prepared a ground-floor bedroom to facilitate Jacqueline's movement. Thomas had moved in temporarily to help the family adjust. Finn, I've never seen you so happy, he remarked, because I've never had a real family. Now I do. Manon ran through the house, exploring every room. Jacqueline was moved to see the well-maintained garden and the spacious kitchen. Lisa, this is too big for us. Not too big, just enough to hold love. The first few weeks were an adjustment period. Manon had to learn to live in a house after months on the street. Jacqueline was getting used to comfort after years of simplicity. Elizabeth was discovering the joy of coming home and finding people who cared about her. How was your day? Manon asked every evening. A simple question that had never been asked of Elizabeth before. Thomas visited daily and began to help with the business. For the first time, she delegated important tasks to him. Do you trust me now? Thomas asked. I've learned that trust is a form of love. Sophie, the assistant, was impressed by the changes in Elizabeth. Madame Duran, you're different, more present. I'm learning to live, not just to work. 3 months later, Elizabeth organized a birthday party for Manon, who was turning 9. It was the first party the little girl had ever had. Can I invite the children from the shelter? Manon asked. Of course you can. The party brought together 20 orphan children, Thomas, Philippe, Sophie, and a few of Elizabeth's close colleagues. Jacqueline helped organize everything from the kitchen, overseeing the preparation of the cakes. Grandma, this is the best party ever, Manon said. This is just the beginning, my dear. During the party, Elizabeth announced a surprise. I want to make Manon's adoption official. The little girl jumped onto Elizabeth's lap. For real? For real? If Jacqueline agrees, of course I agree. You saved each other. The adoption process took a few months, but finally, Manon got the Duran surname. "Now we're a family on paper," she said proudly, showing the new documents. "We've always been a family in our hearts," Elizabeth replied. Philippe kept his promise and created the Jacqueline Marie Foundation, dedicated to orphan children and abandoned elderly people. The first project was to completely renovate the shelter where Jacqueline had lived. "I want you to be the director," Philippe told Jacqueline. "I don't have the education for that. You have the experience, and that's more important." Jacqueline accepted and transformed the shelter into a benchmark for humanized care. A year after their reunion, Elizabeth was completely healed. Her legs functioned perfectly, and she had reduced her work hours to 40 per week. "Manon's massages were miraculous," Thomas commented. "It wasn't the massages," Elizabeth replied. "It was love. Love heals everything." Manon, now 10 years old, studied at a private school and took piano lessons. Her dream was to become a doctor to help people like Jacqueline. "You're already a doctor," Elizabeth said. "You healed my soul, and you healed mine too." Jacqueline had fully recovered from her stroke and, at 68, was managing the shelter with youthful energy. Every afternoon, she gathered the children to tell them stories. "What story will you tell us today, Grandma?" they would ask. "The story of a little street girl who saved a sick millionaire. Is this story true?" The best stories are always true. During sleepless nights, Elizabeth reflected on how her life had changed. Her unexplained paralysis had been the trigger she needed to confront buried truths. Thomas had taken over a large part of the company and proved to be a natural leader. Elizabeth could finally be a full-time mother. "Mom, do you regret anything?" he asked during one of their conversations. "I regret taking 52 years to discover what happiness is." "At least you've discovered it?" "Yes. And I intend to enjoy every minute I have left." Sophie continued to be an assistant, but her duties now included coordinating the family's social activities. She organized a program where Manon visited schools to tell her story. "The children are impressed when you tell them you lived on the street," Sophie remarked. "I like to show them there's always hope," Manon replied. 2 years after the start of this story, Elizabeth decided to write a book about her experience. She wanted others to know that true healing comes from within. "What will you call your book?" Jacqueline asked. "I Can Heal You," Elizabeth replied, in homage to Manon's words that changed her life. The book became a success, and Elizabeth donated the profits to the Jacqueline Marie Foundation. "Money only has value when it helps others," she said in an interview. Manon grew up surrounded by love. Jacqueline taught her values and traditions. Elizabeth offered her opportunities and structure. Thomas became the big brother she never had. "I'm the luckiest girl in the world," she would say. "It's not luck," Jacqueline corrected. "It's the result of good decisions." In reality, they had all made the right choices. Elizabeth had chosen to trust an unknown child. Manon had chosen to help a stranger in exchange for finding her grandmother. Jacqueline had chosen to forgive rather than hold a grudge. "The most beautiful things in life happen when we act with our hearts," Jacqueline philosophized. 3 years later, the house in Beverly Hills was often visited by children from the shelter, foundation employees, and friends the family had made. "Our house has become a gathering place," Thomas remarked. "Houses are meant to welcome people," Elizabeth replied. "It took me a while to understand that." Manon, now 12 years old, had become a confident and affectionate teenager. Her story of resilience inspired everyone around her. "Aunt Lisa, do you think I could become a doctor?" she asked one day. "I'm sure of it, and you'll be the best doctor in France." "How can you be so sure?" "Because you already have the most important gift, that of healing people from the inside." Jacqueline, at 70, was a fulfilled woman. She managed the shelter, took care of Manon, and lived in a house filled with love. "Lisa, do you know what the happiest day of my life was?" she asked one afternoon as they had tea in the garden. "Which one?" "The day you were born. And the second happiest was when I found you again." "For me too," Elizabeth replied, holding the hand of the woman who had raised her. Philippe had become a dedicated philanthropist and had completely changed his relationship with money. He visited the family every week and helped Manon with her math homework. "Uncle Philippe, were you really a bad boy?" Manon asked. "I was a boy who was afraid. That's not the same. And now I'm a man who has learned to be brave." The Jacqueline Marie Foundation had grown and was now caring for over 300 children in 3 different cities. The model of humanized care had been replicated in other regions. "I never imagined seeing my name on a plaque," Jacqueline said, moved. "Your name should appear much more often," Elizabeth replied. "Why?" "Because you represent all that is best in a person." For years after the start of this story, Elizabeth was invited to give a lecture at a university on personal transformation. "What was the turning point of your change?" a student asked. "When an 8-year-old girl taught me that true healing doesn't come from medicine or surgery. It comes from love, forgiveness, and the courage to face painful truths." "Do you think your paralysis was really psychosomatic?" "I believe my body was screaming a truth that my mind refused to hear. When I finally listened, I was freed." In the audience, Manon listened proudly to her adoptive mother. "She's incredible, isn't she, Grandma?" she whispered to Jacqueline. "She always was. She just needed to discover it." After the lecture, a journalist wanted to interview Manon. "How did you know you could heal Mrs. Elizabeth?" "I didn't know. I just knew she had a sick soul, and Grandma taught me that love heals everything. And if it hadn't worked, it would have worked another way. Love always finds a way." 5 years later, Manon celebrated her 16th birthday. She was among the top students in her high school and still dreamed of becoming a doctor. "Aunt Lisa, when I graduate, I'll treat patients for free at Grandma's shelter. I have no doubt, and I'll be there to see you. Will you promise me?" "I promise you. And do you know why? Because you taught me that promises are sacred." Jacqueline, at 73, remained active and healthy. She had become a respected figure in the community and received awards for her social work. "Grandma, you're famous," Manon joked. "I'm just a woman who understood that serving others is the best way to serve God." Thomas had married and had a son named Pierre, in honor of Jacqueline. The child grew up calling Manon aunt and Jacqueline great-grandma. "Our family has grown even more," remarked Elizabeth, holding her grandson on her lap. "And it's not over," said Thomas, looking at his pregnant wife. "All the better. An empty house is a sad house." Elizabeth's company prospered under the shared management with Thomas. They had created a social responsibility program that employed young people from the shelter. "Mom, I think we found our true calling," Thomas said. "Which is transforming lives by offering opportunities. That's the most beautiful calling there is." One Sunday afternoon, 6 years after the start of this story, the family was gathered in the garden. Elizabeth watched Manon playing with her baby nephew, Thomas in conversation with his wife, Jacqueline telling stories to other visiting children. "Sophie, look at this," she said to her assistant, who had practically become a family member. "What, Mrs. Elizabeth? True happiness. It took me 52 years to know what it is. Was it worth the wait? Every second of suffering that led me here was worth it." That evening, Elizabeth wrote in her journal, "Today marks exactly 6 years since an 8-year-old girl whispered in my ear that she could heal me. She didn't lie. She healed me from loneliness, coldness, the fear of loving. She healed me from the guilt I carried without knowing it. She gave me back a family I didn't even know I had lost. Manon taught me that true healing doesn't happen in the body. It happens in the soul, and a healed soul transforms everything around it." Manon entered the room at that moment. "Aunt Lisa, what are you writing?" "I'm writing about gratitude." "Gratitude for what?" "For having had the courage to whisper in the ear of a paralyzed woman that she needed to be healed." "And you, are you grateful for having listened to me?" Elizabeth hugged the teenager who had transformed her life. "Manon, you know I love you, don't you?" "I know, and I love you too. Forever, forever and a day more." In the garden, Jacqueline watered the plants, humming a lullaby. She had planted a rose bush where they used to have tea together. "Why a rose bush, Grandma?" Manon had asked. "Because roses are like life. They have thorns that sting, but also flowers that bring joy. And when you take care of them, they become more beautiful each season." Thomas passed through the garden with his son in his arms. "Jacqueline, Mom wants to know if you can prepare her beignets for tea time." "Of course. I'll also teach Manon the recipe. She already knows how to make them. But some recipes need love to succeed, and that takes time to learn." In the kitchen, Manon helped Jacqueline prepare the beignet. "Grandma, do you think our story has a happy ending?" "Our story doesn't have an ending, my dear. It has a happy continuation." "How so?" "Because when a family is formed with true love, it never ends. It becomes a seed for other happy families. And when I grow up and have my children, you'll tell them our story, and they'll learn that love is the only thing that multiplies when shared." Elizabeth appeared in the kitchen. "Can I help?" "Of course," Jacqueline said. "A family that cooks together stays together." The three women worked side by side, each representing a different generation, united by the experience that had transformed them all. "Aunt Lisa," Manon said, kneading the dough, "do you still remember the day we met?" "I remember every detail. You whispered in my ear that you could heal me, and I really healed you. You did more than heal. You resurrected me." "How so?" "Before you, I only existed. After you, I started to live." Jacqueline smiled as she fried the beignet. "Lisa, do you know what makes me happiest in this whole story?" "What?" "Seeing that my little girl didn't just find a family. She created one." "How did she do it?" "Because it's her love that brought us all together. If she hadn't had the courage to help you, none of this would have happened." Manon blushed. "I just wanted to find my grandmother." "And you found much more," said Elizabeth. "You found an entire family. And you, what did you find?" Elizabeth and Jacqueline exchanged a look. "We found the meaning of life," they answered together. "The end of the story. Now, tell me what you think of this story of overcoming in love. Do you believe that forgiveness can truly heal such deep wounds? Leave your opinion in the comments and don't forget to like if the story moved you.